China in the month of April had tightened its grip on rare earth element exports. Now, that's a vital component for electric vehicles as well as electronics. It has put Indian manufacturers, especially those in the auto sector, in a tight spot. Now, rare earth magnets are vital for both electric engines, ICE engines, as well as consumer white goods. Supply chain disruptions are spooking Indian firms. At least 2 shipment requests have been denied and supplies are stuck at Chinese ports since early April this year. Remember, Beijing's April curbs, a response to US tariff hikes, have added layers of licensing red tape, hitting Indian importers particularly hard. Now, India is saying it is exploring diplomatic channels to get China to reopen supply taps and also preparing to reduce its reliance on Chinese imports of rare earth magnets in the long term. Now, speaking in Bern in Switzerland, Commerce and Industry Minister Piyush Goyal confirmed that India is actively working with industry stakeholders as well as startups to develop alternate domestic capabilities and secure self-reliant supply chains. Listen in to what the Commerce Minister said.
Obviously, there are issues around the stopping of permanent magnets from China to India, which will affect our auto sector particularly and several white goods and other sectors. Our embassy is in dialogue with them. Commerce Ministry is also working. Some companies have put in their applications and we hope that good sense will prevail and they will get their approvals for permanent magnets. Having said that, we are working on several other tracks to see the availability from alternate sources, to look at our Indian Indian Rare Earths Limited, providing the necessary materials to be able to speed up the development of our own products. And in a way, it's a wake-up call for all those who have become over-reliant on certain geographies. It's a wake-up call for the whole world that you need trusted partners in your supply chain. And India is now becoming the alternate that the world is looking up to, because with India they have the confidence that they will never have to suffer this kind of.
Let's delve deeper into this very important topic. And joining us this morning is Dilip Chenoy, Chairman of India Battery Swapping Association. I also have Barnik Chitran Maitra, PE Investor, Managing Partner, Chrysalis Equity Ventures. Mr. Chenoy, let me begin by asking you, how relevant really are these rare earth magnets? What components are they exactly used for? Just decode it for our viewers this morning. What is India's dependence really when it comes to rare earth magnets?
The whole rare earth, usage in industry, right? It spans, like you heard the Commerce Minister say, spans white goods, some defense equipment, and also auto. So the permanent magnet in electric motors, right? Especially if you use nolidium iron or boron magnets, they are rare earths and they're used here. Second, battery chemistry, but I think it's less common, but it's used in nickel metal hydride batteries, which are alternate to lithium, which also we are inordinately dependent on China. And of course, in electronic components, it is used in the display system. And of course, China controls about close to 75 to 80% of the global production and over 85% of the global refining capacity here. So what is the impact? What are the areas that we're looking at? One is electric EV motor production. Second is looking at battery alternatives, which will be limited. And of course, it's going to impact the whole visual display sector and also motors in the white good sector. So that's the range of the use of this rare earths in industry in India.
Right, Mr. Chenoy. Barnik, with China owning about 70 to 75% of rare earth element mining and 85 to 90% of exports. Now the question really is, even though Piyush Goyal is saying that there are short-term challenges, but even in the long term, can the world really live without China's supply chains?
No, I think we have to understand that there has to be diversification of supply chains. If you look at production capacity outside China, there are several countries which are graphic listed, whether it be Australia, whether it be Brazil, whether it be in African countries, where you do have reserves of rare earth minerals, but not enough developed production capacities. I think the more important part is also refining and processing capacity, where if you look at that number also, China owns nearly 90% of that. So countries like India and global economies have to develop their own refining processing capacity, but more importantly, have more diversified supply chains with countries beyond China, right? Whether they be in Africa, whether they be in South America, to ensure that we have more access to rare earth metals. And more importantly, I think there is now discussion of how you can build alternate technologies, whether they be in battery chemistry or whether they even be in motors where there is magnetless motor technology, where I think there has to be a technology diversification lens also, where alternate technologies and reliance on rare earth minerals can be got away. But this is a long-term play. It's not going to happen by a few startups in India doing something. That's not the way we have to do. It has to be a government-to-government-led initiative to diversify supply chains. Just expecting a few handful of companies to suddenly explore the world and create new sources of this is very hard to imagine.
All right, that's a lot of information you've given, Barnik. Let's take it one by one. Dilip Chenoy, like Barnik was saying, and of course the minister also alluded to, is this expansion and exploring alternatives. And while we understand startups may not be the only port of call, but the fact really is that, is the industry really already experimenting with alternatives to such magnets?
Yes, actually there is a program where many companies are looking at magnets without rare earths, right? Around the world, including in India, there is also a kind of a combined effort to do that across different industries. So yes, as Barnik mentioned, it has to be a collaborative effort and it has to be also supported by government. So in terms of manufacturing of battery chemistry outside lithium, unfortunately, like I mentioned, the nickel metal hydride batteries also use rare earths, but that's again challenging. So we need to look at that. And the second is in electric motors, to look at how different options are possible. Tesla had developed something there, and hopefully a combined industry effort will do that. There are talks between industry and government on this, and it's a continuing dialogue, as you heard the minister say.
Right. Okay. Barnik, the minister also said that there are short-term challenges, but there's an opportunity in the long term. Now, is this opportunity going to get unlocked in the long term only if there is an amendment to the Mines and Mineral Act? And do we really now very urgently require these mining reforms to kick in?
I think we've been waiting patiently for the last 20, 25 years for mining reforms, right? And far more, I would say, action in the sector. While there is a longer term opportunity, I think the ability for the government to mobilize local resources and local PSUs is something which I'm quite skeptical about, right? So again, in the shorter and medium term, I think Indian industry should really look at supply sources outside India. Maybe there are some investments supported by the government in refining and processing capacity. If there is mining reform and if there is the government PSUs like the Rare Mineral Corporation and Authority can step in, that'd be a delight. But again, I'm very skeptical of any such reforms, at least in the short term. It takes a lot of political courage and also participation of the states to ensure that this gets debottlenecked in the medium term. But again, let's have supply sources outside India. Let's have more refining and processing capacity in India, which allows us to diversify more than what we have, which is dependence on China.
So, Barnik, exactly what kind of a timeline should we expect, given the fact that even if the mining reforms were to be announced and if the framework for the reforms was to come in, let's say, optimistically over the next few months, I think both finding suppliers outside of China and locking in trade deals with them and also getting your own mining sector to kickstart and for activity to begin in the mining sector is definitely a few years.
So I think if you look at the examples of other countries, right, I think you will not hear German automakers and European automakers complain so much about reliance on China, right? This typically takes a 3 to 5 year sustained effort, right, to work with governments and counterparties outside India to develop sources which become stable, significant sources of supply. So in terms of timelines, forget about reforms internally. I think you can actually, along with government support and a government-to-government initiative, launch this, and that will take us around 3 years to start seeing real benefit, right? Now, what you will see is the local reform and the local production ramp up will take a little bit longer, right? While it's easier to ascertain that, listen, we will get this done, right? Given the stops and starts we have this in the sector. And notably, please note that internal mining of minerals is not just a domain of the central government, but the states also have to step in. And in a lot of the states where you have mineral-rich reserves, they are not governed by the ruling coalition. So I
Right.
am far more, I would say, cautiously pessimistic about how soon we can get local capacity on board, but getting countries and diversifying supply should be done within a 2 to 3 year time frame. I think the local capacity can take probably 5 years, but that also I'm far more skeptical.
All right, Dilip Chenoy, for those 2 to 3 years for diversifying supply chains and at least 5 years for local supply to kick in, we saw in the immediate post-COVID aftermath, we saw semiconductor shortage and auto prices really went through the roof. Now, with this shortage or with this sort of curb in rare earth magnets, what's the impact on the consumer? Will inflation kick in and how bad will it be?
So I think, Kartik, just one point, just to add to what Barnik said, there is
Sure.
an alternative for changing the mining policy and doing that. If you can quickly devise two separate PLIs, right? Production-linked incentive schemes. I know it's not actually happened in the mining sector, but I'm pretty sure you can devise a PLI scheme there and actually work on it, and that may shorten the time frame. You might see the government actually announce two separate PLIs in this sector. But in
Okay.
terms of cost, right, the first thing you're actually going to see is because of the shortage, right, there are two aspects. One is the availability of certain models, and unfortunately, hybrids are more, impacted by this because the technology is such. And second, you're going to see cost go up. Cost in terms of it will drive up the motor cost, will drive up component costs. Even if you do alternative sourcing arrangements, you will not see this, the cost being maintained at the same. So definitely one cost going up. Second, of course, there are going to be supply chain delays, right? You saw that happen during COVID.
Right.
Certain models were discontinued. In fact, Suzuki has announced that they have discontinued a certain model
That's
in
right.
Japan. You've seen the component manufacturers, BorgWarner, ZF, all also, announcing that they have challenges. And,
Right.
in fact, what Barnik said, maybe the automakers in Europe are not impacted, but even Mercedes-Benz and others have also said that there's going to impact that. So one, costs will go up. Two, supply chains will go up. Three, certain models will not be available. And of course, most importantly, localization goals, which most countries have done, trying to avoid their dependence on imports, etc., is going to be stalled. So these are four immediate impact of this in the auto sector, and including in the white good and other sector. Incidentally, I just forgot to add last time, ISRO and DRDO are actually conducting research and working on rare earth magnets
That's right.
substitute. Or if industry could actually get onto it, it could be a very interesting
Right,
program
of
going
course.
forward.
It would be an
And
interesting
again, the
time
COVID
to be in.
experience shows how
Right.
it can be done.
Absolutely.
If
Well,
government, industry, and the institutes get together, you can dramatically do things, and you can, you need to actually do the same thing what you did there: fast clearances, joint working,
Sure.
prototypes, etc. going forward.
All right. Well, that's a long road ahead. And till that long road reaches its ultimate conclusion, there is going to be, of course, some hiccups and some chaos along the way. Barnik, Dilip, thank you so much for taking the time and joining us here this morning.